What's up, guys? Ricky Royal here, and thanks for tuning in. I'm here with Ryan Wells, and today we're going to talk about depression. I'm actually excited. Ryan's actually been following my stuff for a couple years now, and we've kind of linked up and had a few conversations. But he hit me up the other day with a whole bunch of questions on depression, and they were good fucking questions. And so I thought, well, we both actually thought of like, why don't we turn this into a piece of content? Because I feel a lot of the questions he would have on depression, it's December. I used to get really bad seasonal depression. I've actually dealt with depression since I was like 14, like bad, like dark times. And I feel actually within this last year, I've kind of overcome it, and we all go through our ebbs and flows. And I do have depressed days, and I'm sure not a doctor, but I would like to kind of, if you're struggling with depression, just share some of my own insights, my own experiences that have helped me either get through it or overcome it with you. And we're going to have Ryan asking questions. So Ryan, take it away, man. Let's get into this.
So depression has always been very interesting to me. Almost all the people that's around me has had it or still has it and taking medications and things like that.
Mm,
And for me, when I was younger, I always thought it was just like an emotion, like it's just sad state, and I never thought a big deal of it. And then, as the awareness of depression and anxiety grew higher, I started thinking like it's a little more serious than I expected. But problem with my understanding of depression was I couldn't really tell, I couldn't comprehend difference between being sad and being actually depressed. And I'm
mm,
not sure that's because the word depression or the illness or whatever, people like to describe it as, if it's desensitized by certain people that just doesn't know what actually depression is because of WebMD and a lot of social media posts these days. A lot of people like to self, what's the word?
Self-medicate.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
and self-diagnose as well, that they have depression and anxiety without actual doctors know.
Mm,
And that includes a lot of my friends as well. And a lot of them have really used depression to either get out of work or get
mm,
out of a lot of responsibility and then, throw excuses and stuff like that. And for me, I've asked around to multiple people but they all kind of told me the same thing. It's a chemical imbalance. It's not a just sad state. It's like a thing that just blocks you from doing everything.
yeah.
But I've seen people like you and other couple of people that I know that's highly intelligent and has like a goal and ambition. And
Mm,
even though you guys have depression, you guys can work through that.
mm.
So I thought you'd be the perfect person to ask, what is it really like to have depression? And overall, do you think many people are desensitizing how serious depression is?
Yeah, that you bring up a lot of good topics there because I remember I think like a year ago I wrote some kind of aggressive posts, but it was more just to inspire people. And like somebody posted, I got blasted. I got like 200 people being like, "You don't know what it's like," blah 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 blah, and just like hating on it. And I was like, I'm not shitting on you guys, but you did raise a valuable point of like the level of ambition and like having a sense of purpose. And I think that is definitely, and that's kind of why I pivoted to men's development coaching and helping men outside of dating just find a purpose or a mission in life too. Even if you just have you could break it down like higher purpose could be helping the world. Something could be like a purpose just to kind of help you become a better man, or you could even do like a mini mission. Even like I remember before, like even trying to start a business, it was like trying to move to a different city because the average person like only like dies 300 miles away from their hometown. So I think like tapping into your ambition and in finding some like a north star, even if it's not even that big. Even I know people some feminists are going to hate on me for this, but even having the thing of like I want to bang like 10 bitches or 30 bitches or something, just having some goal, that's a good thing at a certain level because it's pulling you out of those victim vibes.
Mm.
And I've gone to those victim vibes a lot. Like I was homeless for a couple years, and how I got out of that was again service. I started helping, even though I was homeless. I found a food charity that I was actually getting fed from in Portland, and I started helping them. I was like, "Hey, what could I do to help?" And actually just doing. And it's hard when you're in that headspace because it is. I'm sure. There's probably a massive spectrum of it, and I'm sure some people are faking it or that they know they can't fake it. So there's always that. But there is like when you're at a lower level, um, you see the world through a bad lens too. I mean, do you still live in Seattle?
No, actually move out
Okay.
to North Dakota. Yeah.
Okay. So like we've both lived in Seattle though. And like in Seattle, the days are always gray. It's almost like, and that's where depression and suicide rates are really high too. Um, and you kind of get, when you see every day, I remember I moved from Northern California to Seattle, and like the sun never came out. Like it would just be gray all day and then it would be dark. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it fucked with my head a little bit. You can kind of just see the world through that lens, kind of like that weather. And so the same thing with depression. Sometimes you're just stuck in it for so much and you don't know a way out, that you kind of just are stuck in that state of being. Um, one good thing to look at, or one, not hierarchy, but thing of range of emotions. If you've ever studied Dr. Hawkins' work, he does Power versus Force or Letting Go, and he kind of bridged the gap between spirituality, science, and like I guess philosophy. And he kind of put emotions on a vibrational scale. And so, like when you get into like depression and grief and stuff, you're operating at a very low vibration. Where like happiness, you're operating at a higher vibration. And you're almost on two different. It's almost like being on two different radio channels, and that's what's hard. Even with me and like what I do, like sometimes I like to give people tough love, because sometimes you need tough love to snap you out of it, and sometimes that will snap some people out of their, I call it victim vibes, but other people that'll make them bury too deep in. They won't see my good intention behind it, and I'm just being a fucking asshole because they're so lodged in that fucking state. So you could almost think of like a state as being in like a swimming pool, right? And the person's like, I'm wet, I'm so wet, and you're like, get out of the fucking pool, like
Right.
get the sun, right? But they're like, but no, it's wet and the life is wet. And that's kind of what depression is at a certain level, is like you're just stuck in this like very bleak state. So yeah, to kind of come around to it, ambition is something that's definitely helped me, is tapping into that. On that scale, they talk about anger, and how anger is actually where anger gets shit done in a certain way. And I know as men, sometimes we're trained to bottle anger and not let it out, but anger is healthy in a way, is it actually helps you switch state. Is like where if something is putting you in a state that you don't want to be, you can switch into anger and start making quick changes that you wouldn't normally make. Someone's fucking with you or something like that, you're like, hey, this is not okay, this has got to stop, right? Or hey, I'm being a bitch and it's not helping my life, this has got to stop. And so that's where ambition has really helped me, where I can get into those. I even get into some of this year I was becoming aware of, is like being a martyr. I'm like, I'm just doing so good, but it's not being understood and shit like that. And you kind of get trapped in a martyr complex. And I was like, hey, enough of that. Enough of that. That is not helping me. So you can kind of use anger to tap into that. And then anger kind of gets you into the higher levels of it, because you can't just go from depressed to happiness. And that's why even people in a joyous state, and I notice I do that too, is like you kind of want to, you're kind of joking with them, you're kind of fucking with them to help them pull them out, but it's actually making them bury themselves in more. And you're like, well, I'm in a good state, they need to come over to my end, which you're right. But the way you're going about it, they're not relating to it. They can't relate to it. So you just seem like a fucking asshole, even though your intention is good. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I actually had an exact situation like that, where I had a depressed friend, and then one day I just kind of snapped, because well, the way my mind is that being adopted and then being running out of the home at 17 because of very abusive guardians,
Yeah.
legal guardians. And I went through like the 4 suicidal thoughts, and I have scars from it. And
Yeah.
like for me, when I see other people, other kids, and I'm also immigrant as well. I came here when I was 13, so I had to learn different language and things like that. Not that that's a big deal. To me, it's just like that's just what life is. So it's when somebody's crying over something so simple, like to me, like how is that, as a mature human being, how is that, like how are you doing that? I just don't understand where you can find excuse to say, oh, because you're
Yeah.
sad or you're not, in the mood for it, you can't pull through. So that's where you kind of help me understand, is like it's not that logically they can't get out. It's just the state of being. I guess since I've never really been there, so I don't really know. But
Yeah.
that friend that I've talked to, it's like so I was telling her, like I understand these things are important, but it's
Mhm.
really not. And the way I was going about it, like you said, you can't turn someone's state from sad anger to happiness right away. I was going the wrong way, and then
Yeah.
eventually, that I did turn out an asshole to her, and we ended up ending the conversation pretty harshly.
Mhm.
But like, so that does kind of help me understand a little bit. It's just, I guess,
Yeah.
I've been through such a tough time as a kid too. It's really
Mhm.
hard for me to fathom someone else going through something that when they have parents, a full house, a roof, and food.
Yeah.
It's like you've been homeless before, but you made yourself get out of that state
Right.
to where you're ambitious and doing things. So it's hard for me to really understand and fathom when other people can't do such a simple thing because they're not just feeling it.
Yeah, no, I relate to it, and I get in those situations too, where I'm like, dude, like, or someone that's more privileged than you, they have like a
Mhm.
good family, they come from wealth and whatnot, and I've really had to like change my thinking about it too, because my thing is I want to help people. So like, I could be like, it is like it makes sense. We've definitely gone. Both of us have gone through our own harsh times, and adversity is actually good. You actually kind of see the benefit of adversity
Right.
because it makes you a strong person. It kind of shows you that there is a dark underbelly to life, but that you can survive it. And the fact that you can
Mhm.
survive it gives you that internal confidence, which is cool. And so sometimes, like you can see someone maybe with privilege that has more money than you, has a better grown up in a better household than you, but they do have depression, they do have anxiety, and it's hard to relate to them because you're like, dude, you haven't seen shit. Like life could get way worse.
Mhm.
Um, so it kind of it's at a certain time it comes down to like case by case too, and what do people respond to, and maybe sometimes being humble enough, and I've realized this too, it's like you can't help everybody. Like you're not the guy maybe to help that person, but maybe you can be that. What can you do? You can be that space for them. Maybe you can just listen to them, and maybe you can just
Right.
plant those seeds, and who knows if those seeds will actually click or not. Maybe you can just kind of test their reality a little bit to get them to think a little bit higher level, and it's up to the individual. So I mean, some people, you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves either, and that's someone like I'm very much an empath, and so I see people's pain. I see people just sitting there with energetically with self-hate, but if they don't want to take care of it, like there's not much you can do. And so you kind of have to, it almost gives your own self a sense of maturity with helping others, like with your friend group. It sounds like what you're trying to do is realizing who are the one you start realizing who are the ones I can help and who I can't, and how to relate to them. Some you can give tough love to, sometimes the guys, it's like, hey dude, toughen up. um,
Right.
there was like a Reddit post the other day in a spirituality group, and someone was talking about a twin flame and how they're going through all this stuff, and I could just see the just by the attitude of it, they were just in the victim vibes, and I'm just, and my thing too, and that's kind of where I've gone through, and it's kind of the tough love mentality. But it's like, you think your life's bad, go sleep outside tonight. Like go
Mhm.
sleep on concrete tonight. Like
Right.
you'll change your mind. You'll wake up in the morning. I got locked out of the house the other night, like a couple weeks ago. I was out and couldn't get a hold of my roommate, and I had to sleep on a fucking bench, and it kind of made me grateful again. I was like, oh yeah, remember these times. But in the morning, dude, I had the best shower of my fucking life. The
Right.
next meal I ate was great. I was shivering, but it showed me too that I could survive it, right? And so
Mhm.
like, when you go through adversities like that, um it helps you. And even in later tonight, I made some PB&Js to go feed some homeless people, because that, again, that level of service helps you
Yeah.
as well too. It helps pull you out of the victim vibes, and that's tough. That's tough for some people. So again, like, some people can hear that. Some people are going to be like, bro, I'm suffering, I'm the one that needs it. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, but like, the way I see it, like depression, anxiety, it's like, if you want to see it as far as like energetic perspective, I feel it's like the same energy, that same compounded energy. If you compounded it and focused it on a fucking mission or getting better with women or whatever, it would activate your genius, it would activate your creativity, it would activate that ambition. But unfortunately, that same energy is compounded inward, and it's just focused on pain, and then it's just like focusing on the pain. So it just makes you heavy. And I feel that sometimes when I notice my own depression, and it still happens from time to time, and it slips. I notice that sadness, that energy kind of compounds. I'm like, oh shit. So sometimes something like even exercise will kind of help like stretch that energy out and get it moving. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah,
I
it's a challenge.
think that's I think that's really important what you said, the last part there, that, exercise too.
Yeah.
I do hear, like, even drinking a lot of water. I think Jim Carrey and Jordan Peterson, they talked about this as well, that it's okay to have depression, but you also got to do something about it too, whether it's exercise or meditate, or do whatever you can, avoid all the bad habits you have. I mean, that's easier said than done. Like I
Yeah.
said, I've never even been to doctor to see if I have depression.
Mm.
I personally, even if they were to prescribe me with it, that's just how my mindset work. I don't think I can accept it. So I had a question on this one specifically
Okay.
for me to help, to kind of understand a little more. Since you have depression and then you have reached many goals, and I respect you and admire you very well in that field as well. Um, the what goes through when you're in your depression state, or if you remember when you were younger and you had a depression then, um, is it possible to think logically? Because I
Mhm.
just so when somebody says, "Oh my gosh, I'm anxious," what do I do? I'm super anxious. I
Yeah.
gotta take my pill or whatever. I'm like, no, I think what you're experiencing is being nervous because you're about to go into a job interview, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I'm just anxious and my heart's pounding. I'm like, yeah, I get the same way when I go ask girl on a date, or when
Mhm.
I go get a job interview or something new that I've never done before. And same thing with depression, like, let's say like their goldfish died and they're sad. And it's like, oh my God, I'm so depressed. I had that fish for like 9 years. I'm like, no, it's called a sadness, it happens. So like I don't know if people are kind of have misconception on if they have actually have depression or anxiety,
Yeah.
versus emotion they're feeling is not really explained to them.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I think, or I feel that, first of all, like depression and anxiety, it's one of those things where it's multifaceted. There's multiple reasons why you could have it. I don't think there's one ultimate answer.
That is
Um,
true.
but I feel like, I was talking to my friend Molly on a podcast, and we were talking about when you go into a new room and the anxiety you feel. We talked about being an empath. She was like
Mhm.
saying, that's not actually your anxiety. That's actually you just going into like almost like an energetic wave of other people's anxiety. So if you're an
Mhm.
empath, you're actually feeling it.
Oh
Um,
wow.
at this at the same time too, you could be anxious going into that same scenario because of insecurities. So it could be
Mhm.
like the collective anxiety of that room you're walking into with your own insecurities, and then it's amplifying it. So I think it's multifaceted. You could have someone. I think you're right about the one example you gave, where it's a person who has depression and then they're feeling anxious, and so maybe those emotions are compounding on each other. The anxiety could be triggering thoughts of when they were depressed, and so now it's putting them back in that state.
I
So,
see.
so I think it's multifaceted like that. um yeah, like the one thing that's helped me is not identify with it. Like you said, you're a person of depression. I don't view myself as a person with depression anymore. I view I'm someone who's had it, or I have it. I try to kind of disidentify, because I think that's a huge problem too, is people turn this into an identity, and your victim state, whatever it is, and it can be very subtle. Like even for me, I had like a little bit of a martyr complex. I'm doing so much good for people, but people aren't understanding, or I'm not getting the likes I want, or whatever bullshit, right? And so that is turning into a little identity that wants to like keep propelling itself, right? Um, Someone said something the other day, and I feel like this is a good opportunity to kind of talk about it. Like we're all kind of, I don't think schizophrenic is the right term, but we're all a little bit schizophrenic, and we're all kind of have multiple personalities in a way. Like we all kind of have different character matrices that come out and whatnot as well. And I think we have like, that's why I teach like for men's development is like the king, warrior, magician. We have the good, like those character arcs are in us, the king, warrior, magician, lover. They're in all men. We just haven't developed them. But there's also like the shadow side to those as well. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like we get triggered, and different parts of our character matrices get activated, in the depression and the anxiety. Um, so I think like two good keys that would actually help you if you're going through depression, or whatever it looks like, whatever reason it is coming up. One is bringing awareness to it. Um, just breathing, just kind of becoming aware, and by being aware is seeing that you aren't kind of disidentifying yourself a little bit from the depression. Just be like, okay, this is my depression, right? You could even give it a name or something like that. There's like a self-development tool where you could, give it a shitty name or whatever. So you're kind of disidentifying, and by doing that, it kind of puts you back in the driver's seat of control. Because part of it too is it's attached to your nervous system, and especially if you're feeling anxious. The problem with anxiety on top of it is anxiousness is a very visceral feeling, right? Your body's actually like responding to it, so it's
Right.
really easy for you to identify with it. But again, you can disidentify a little bit. Oh, my body is feeling a little bit anxious. Even just saying that, oh, my body is a little, even if you have to like, if that sounds weird and you kind of have to pretend a little bit, it kind of again brings you back to center of like, oh, my body's a little bit anxious. Oh, my depression is acting up. My depression is saying this, right? And when you can disidentify a little bit, you can kind of create that little bit, even if it's just a little bit of awareness, where then it brings you back to center. And you're like, well, I'm not my depression, but I am going through a depressed state, right? So
I
that's a
see.
little bit different. And then you can relate to people like, and really like one thing I've learned to own and I'm doing better at is just owning when I have a depressed day and telling people, be like, yeah, guys, I'm a little depressed today. Like, I'm sorry, my energy's a little low. Because a lot of people, your depression tends to want to hide, but the more you can kind of own it, the like less control it has over you. Usually, like those shadow sides to us, they need to hide to have control over us. And
Right.
that's why people are so, you'll see people so intense to defend it, because you're not talking to them at that point. You're talking to their depression. You're talking to their
Mhm.
anxiety. You're almost talking to a character matrix in them that is like their shadow side, right? And that's why it'll fight to the
Right.
death, because you challenging it is it feels like a death to them. Because like if when you get rid of that stuff, and I'll kind of go into that too, how the depression I do have, when it appears, how it appears is your personal evolution. When I'm deciding to do something new, there's going to be a death of my old self, a death of old personality matrices wiring in my brain. Even within the last 2 weeks, a lot of changes in my life have been made, are I'm doing, and I can notice it. There's like a little bit of a veil or a little bit of anxiety comes up and whatnot. But I'm just aware, like, okay, this is just me evolving, so things don't make sense, and I kind of just view it as like a veil or like a storm I'm going through. And so I understand the context of what's going on, and so I can just write it out. I'm like, okay, I'm a little depressed, or even like I think a day or two ago, I went through a walk and I even had to cry it out. And I've like actually been training myself to cry a lot more, because like as men, we're like, don't cry, you're a bitch, all that stuff. But I'm
Right.
like, no, it's actually a healthy coping mechanism that helps you
Mhm.
release. Like,
Right.
and that's why I love women, and women are so good at it too, and they usually do it pretty often, right? They cry and whatnot, and they release, they're able to let go. And that's how they're able to. Guys bitch about how girls let go of relationships so quickly. Well, why is that? They cry it out, they let go of that, and it's almost like shedding a skin, like a snake skin.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
but it's an emotional matrix, because things get wired into us, relationships get wired into us, and so you have to shed it. And so you got to, I think, like, yeah, so bringing awareness, disidentifying from it. um Meditation is probably like the ultimate, I would say, because even if you feel depressed and you feel like a piece of shit, you can sit on your couch in silence and just be, and that'll really help you train your muscles to become aware, because you'll hear all these thought loops, all these voices come up. Well, they're not you, but you're hearing them, so you can disidentify. And the way I see it is like they're a thought loop. It's almost like, I mean, your brain's like a computer, and so it's these old thought loops that are usually being challenged. If you're trying to evolve, if you're trying to set a goal or something like that, you're killing off old sides of you, and those old sides of you are going to fight to the death to survive. That's why the feeling of suicide like makes sense, because part of you is dying off, but
Mhm.
suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Your
Right.
depression will go away, right? So you got to write it out. So I think the third point too, that I'll wrap this up, and then if you have another question, is understanding the context of what you're going through. If I can understand the context of what I'm going through, that makes the ride easier. And then that means like, okay, you can realize that, okay, I'm just going through, like maybe you have a week where it's raining, right? Well, maybe you're having a week of depression. You're like, okay, this is just a week, a bad week. of depression. But I know on the other side of this, if I feel like shit now, good things are coming.
Mhm.
There's a classic like spiritual truth or hermetic principle, which is like a universal truth, something to the effect of like the pendulum swings one way and then it swings the other. And so when bad things are happening to me or challenges are arising, adversity, I've trained my brain to be like, okay, this is a good thing, because if I can just get through this, good
Mhm.
things are going to show up on the other side of that. So then
Right.
that you can train your brain when good things are coming, that, or when bad things are happening to you, okay, I'm evolving into where I need to go.
Yeah. So something that really clicked in me just on that, um, well, while you're talking about this whole different state thing, uh, I don't think I've understood it this close. No, I wouldn't say close because I still don't know what it is completely. But what really helped me understand about depression is that when you said, when you're talking to a depressed person, you're not talking to that person, but to their depressed state.
Right.
And that's something that I've never heard before. And what how that helps me is that when I get mad, I don't get mad very easily.
Hmm.
It's really hard to get me mad or offended. Um, my mind just works that way. But once I get mad, it's extremely hard to get control over me for somebody. Because like I
Mm.
often get upset when, especially when someone's ignorant. Like that's my like passionately hate ignorance. So when somebody's that mad and they're arguing with me, I don't hear a word that comes out of their mouth. And I'm
Right.
guessing I can kind of relate to when somebody's depressed. It's not that they want to hear logical answers. It's more like you said earlier. Excuse me. Like listening to them is probably going to be the best thing for me to do instead of while trying to logically view. It's like it's not that bad, but
Yeah.
you know. And then, like you said too earlier, we can't help everybody, right? They
Hmm.
have to be able to help themselves first. So I need to be able to recognize that as well. Like you said, since I'm talking to somebody who's in that state, which nothing really makes sense to them,
Hmm.
they just want to be heard. So, but if also when they're not in that state, they're not willing to fight that, like you said, okay, hey, I recognize this is bad, but I'm gonna just own it. I'm gonna say, I'm depressed, but it's gonna be good.
Hmm.
So if I don't see that mindset with them, maybe it's just best for me to kind of walk away, because then I'm just gonna get upset because I don't understand them.
Right.
And that's just one thing, the common thing I've seen among people with depression and anxiety is that everybody says it's nothing logical. You can't just like
Yeah.
transfer them, to the other side. And I had a hard time understanding that, but your explanation really, really did like hit that in a really hard point. Uh,
Yeah, I would take it a step further. Like logic is probably the worst way, and I think it's funny for
right.
guys because we're probably even talking logical now, and it's fine because we're problem solvers, right? That's like the masculine brain is like, if you're
Hmm.
giving me a problem, my brain is immediately going to start thinking of like what are solutions.
Right.
Problem is
Yeah.
is it's emotional, and this is almost the same thing where learning game and success with women helps you. Is same thing, men try to logically try to convince the woman to like them, but again,
Hmm.
you got to speak to the emotions. You got to speak
Right.
to the emotions, and I think like conscious listening definitely helps.
Hmm.
Even just creating that. A big thing that's coming up is and even for men is creating a space. Sometimes they just haven't had the opportunity to express themselves and it's all just been bottled up. So the fact
Right.
that you're listening, like, again, is value in that situation where that's helping them. That's helping them bring them up to a better state because they're able to now express it a bit. And then,
Hmm.
yeah, speaking to their, instead of logically trying to be like, it's not bad, is just speaking to their emotions
Right.
and being like, yeah, and then just seeing where you can plant those seeds to maybe bring them up an emotion, or maybe just
Right.
challenge the belief a little bit. I think that's a good one too. Is kind of see where their belief system is, and then just see if you can challenge it a bit.
Hmm.
And you'll know like if they're able to respond to it or not. Because yeah, like a lot of people don't want to be helped or they're too identified with that, and I think that's, you had it spot on with being able to relate to it with anger. When you're in anger, you're just in anger and you're in that state, and it's funny too, when you're in anger you always come up with these like very certain like decisions that are horrible, but they make sense at the time. You're like, I'm gonna tell this
Right.
person to fuck off for life.
Right.
And it makes
Exactly.
sense in the thing, but it's dumb because you're operating out of that emotion, and no one can
Mhm.
pull you out of that either. So
Right.
it can be a challenge, but just realizing that, and maybe giving them space, and just planting those seeds, creating that space for them, and just like no, not letting them affect you either. I think that's where having like a mission or some type of purpose, even if it just seems shallow to some people or whatnot, you going for money or something like that too. If you have something and you're that state, that's able to pull you up a bit, because then it kind of, what I talked about before with the context, right? Having the context of the situation is like, my thing is, I've always had the context, and I studied depression in philosophy, and they talk about like, you go into that, it's almost going into the bowels of hell, and it's a psychological hell in a way. You're in a
Mhm.
psychological hell. But if you can put yourself as the hero's journey, if you can start seeing yourself as that, or the underdog, right? I remember I came from that paradigm where I was like, I'm the underdog. Um, then you can kind of pull your way out of it because you have a reason to. And so that's like when I go through depressive states now, it's all a part of my fucking journey. It's all part of the hero's journey. It's like, oh, well, this is a chapter. This is a cool chapter I get to share now, because I've gone through it and I know I'll survive. And so you can kind of go into that with maybe a little bit of brash arrogance or confidence, um, to do that too. And I think I kind of use that as well. I always kind of have like a brash arrogance about me, which is not always helpful, but in times of depression or something like that, and even using your ego, even like activating your ego, like kind of tapping into, I mean, even like David Goggins, and there's other guys I've talked about, tapping into your dark side, like tapping, like, if you're going to be depressed, I mean, what, you're a victim and you're a piece of shit and no one gives a fuck about you, right? Okay, so why not be a piece of shit, but like a successful piece of shit, right? Like, why not be that fucking like tap into that dark side to get yourself up a little bit, and then you can let go of that dark side, because it's not a good place to stay. It's not a good,
Right.
healthy place. You'll find that. I mean, I remember even after I got over, or was after my divorce, right? I was like scarred, and I kind of went through a depression there, and women are just bitches. Kind of went through that phase of my life, and I was like, I'm just gonna be the asshole. I was the nice guy for too long. I'm gonna be the asshole, and
Mhm.
I think that was healthy for a while. And I remember giving that advice to someone else that was just going through a divorce. I was like, yeah, be an asshole for a bit. Like, teach yourself the other side of the spectrum, since you know how to be a nice guy. Teach yourself how to be an asshole. But I was like, just don't stay there. Just don't stay there for too long. I was like, then come back to center, because you'll realize very fucking quickly the type of people that you attract are not going to be the people that you want. They're going to be people that do screw you over. They're assholes. They are like deceitful or bitches and whatnot, because that's just the energy you're in. But if that energy pulls you out from being a victim vibe, then use it, right? Use it and then
Mhm.
get rid of it so it doesn't scar you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it really helps me understand the whole thing, and
Okay.
I think um, if more people would, I mean, I don't mean to sound like that, but like if more people would have like mindset, like yours, where you can be aware,
Mm,
and then, if you understand that you're in a bad state, pull yourself out of it, whether it's to
yeah.
tap into the dark side or meditate, exercise, or whatever. And I understand those things are easier said than done. Like for me, it's
Right.
hard to quit sugar, even though I completely understand that things like so bad, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but so, just I think the biggest point for me today was like understanding that when they're depressed, imagine that, I'm talking to a person like, like me when I'm really, really angry.
Hmm.
I even tell my girlfriend, don't talk to me when I'm mad because
Yeah.
I'll say stuff that I don't mean at all. And sometimes I'm just mad at the video game. It has nothing to do with her. And,
Right.
just things like that. And, that you have no idea how hard that just kind of hit me like clearly.
Mm,
And there might be more things that I may have to discover. It's just you're the first person that I came across that can kind of mix logical side and the emotional side of it
mm,
to kind of help me understand. A lot of people
yeah.
I've talked had a lot of sadly, it is what it is, it's the truth, but they had a lot of victim mindset. So
Yeah.
a lot of times they're telling me what their side is, and there wasn't any valuable um things that I can take in to understand.
Hmm.
But like thank you for bringing up those points, really helpful, and
Yeah.
then just being able to talk to you because you
Yeah.
went through both side. I haven't tapped into the other side, so I'm not really sure. But yeah, this has definitely been like a very, very good talk for me.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
man. We'll keep going with encouraging people too. Just I would encourage you to just be more consciously aware of the person. It's almost like a
Mhm.
date. Like you almost want to get information before you start like spewing out your words of wisdom because it's not it may not hit even if you're saying the most
Right.
wisest thing, right? So now
Mhm.
you can be aware of like just putting those seeds and see if they respond well to it. And if they do, then you're like, okay, I can plant more seeds. And I would even say share stories of your adversity, you know, because you went through some hard times. There were some times probably you probably don't think about them because you don't want to, right? You want to stay in a good
Right.
state. But there was times when you got out of bad situations, adversity, and you know you were in some hard times. And even just sharing those stories with other people can kind of may help tap them into their world a bit because now you
Mhm.
have that camaraderie a bit. You can share maybe a story of where you had to leave home and you know how you were scared and whatnot. But clearly you're in front of them and you're fine. So you know you can kind of help them through that. But yeah, plant seeds and then just see where they go. I feel like there was one other thing, but I guess it doesn't need to be said. But yeah, yeah, and thank you for asking your questions, man. And if you guys have any more questions on depression or if something resonated with you, something with Ryan hit the chord, or if you guys were unclear about something like that, leave your questions and comments down below. All right. It was good talking to you, dude. I'll
But
see
thank
you
you so much,
later.
Ricky.
Peace.
See ya.